And last week, of course, the U.S. Supreme Court issued a ruling that is right up there with Roe v. Wade and Brown v. Board of Education. And like those cases, the decision legalizing same-sex marriage has not only generated strong reaction on both sides, but it has also opened up a number of other new questions. And joining us to discuss the far-reaching effects of this decision is Angela D. Giampolo. She is one of the country's most prominent gay rights attorneys. She's much for taking the time today. We appreciate it.
Absolutely. Thanks for having me.
We mentioned Brown v. Board of Education, and folks may remember, either remembering it firsthand or from history, that it took the Justice Department getting involved to force the integration of public schools, particularly in states in the South, to enforce the integration of those schools. In this case, you've got a number of states, particularly in the Bible Belt, on the record as saying that they will not abide by the court's decision. Is this Justice Department all in enforcing those jurisdictions who refuse to accept the ruling to get them? I mean, are they all in? Are they prepared? How prepared are they to go on this? They're
gonna have to be prepared. I mean, at this point, even though the states are on record, like you said, Mississippi, Texas, as not wanting to enforce it, they haven't yet gone beyond the allotted amount of days, if you will. You know, they have the 25 days that have been given before this ruling becomes effective. I mean, when the Supreme Court does something this big, it doesn't go into effect overnight. Right. So they're not yet in default, if you will. They're just on record as such. And you know, I think both sides are plotting. So what I think you're going to see is within the allotted time that they're given, they're going to come up with laws. For instance, the GOP presidential candidate, the governor of Louisiana, has created what's called the Marriage Conscience Act. And it's RFRA, it's sort of the Religious Freedom Restoration Act hybrid, if you will, to deal with just marriage. And they've been planning this for a while. They knew they were going to lose this case. We all knew that we were going to win this. And I think you're going to see an onslaught of hybrid RFRAs dealing with marriage, saying, okay, fine, it's the law of the land, but because of my First Amendment right, we don't have to listen. Yeah. And then they're not necessarily in default. They've just come up with another law that we're going to have to fight.
Which actually brings up the point, again, the other case that I referenced at the outset, Roe v. Wade. Opponents are still 40-some-odd years later fighting that decision and coming up with more legal ways to restrict access to abortion. The court, in fact, has had to readdress that issue any number of times. Do you see that happening in this case?
Absolutely. That's my fear, right? I mean, if you ask any pro-choice person, we don't have the abortion rights that we had in Roe v. Wade, right? Over the last 40 years, Roe v. Wade, some would say, has just been cut down little by little by little. Mm-hmm. And that's what we're afraid is going to happen here with this particular decision, that over the years, it's just going to be cut down little by little by little.
Well, and that's the thing. I wonder long term. I mean, obviously, initially there's going to be some pushback here, but long term, you think of Brown v. Board of Education, for as controversial as it was at the time, today we don't give it a second thought. I mean, integrated schools, we can't imagine anything else. So that sort of went away and becomes sort of the norm. Roe v. Wade, on the other hand, continues to be fought
not so much.
Even today. Right. So you see this as more a Roe v. Wade type scenario on down the line.
Absolutely, and I think this next presidential election, if listeners take anything from this, now is not the time for Jeb Bush. We're going to have potentially 4 Supreme Court justice appointees. I mean,
good point.
Ginsburg has just been holding on. She may be like a weekend at Bernie's where she's not even alive. Like, they're just keeping her, they're just keeping her there because they need her. But
you're not the first person who has speculated on that.
Right. So this next election is key.
This decision, let's talk a little bit about the far-ranging effects, because it's about more than just marriage. This decision, as a lot of folks may know, some may not, this was rooted in a case from Ohio which involved a man who was denied spousal privileges because his same same-sex relationship was not recognized as a marriage. So while everyone is talking about the marriage aspect, clearly this ruling has far-reaching effects that go beyond simply allowing members of the same sex to exchange their I do's. But are we...
Well, let's just talk about that real quick. Let's just talk about the case, because I have chills, you just even bringing him up. And he's coming to Philadelphia. He's along with Matthew Shepard's mother, Edie Windsor. Philadelphia was the before Stonewall, a lot of people don't know, the first place that there was an LGBT riot or demonstration, if you will, in front of Independence Hall. And so James will be here July 4th speaking, and people don't realize that just 2 years ago, this country was in a place where gay people, his partner had ALS and was terminal, was dying, and the Windsor case came down, and they could be deemed married federally. And they did sort of a GoFundMe. They raised over $100,000 to be able to afford a medical airplane, and they flew for the sole purpose of getting married. They flew to Maryland, where it was legal. They had to take his soon-to-be husband off the plane because of airline laws. If you're just in the plane, you're not deemed to have been there, so he had to touch the tarmac. They took this stretcher out of the plane, touched the tarmac. He was legally deemed to have been in Maryland, married them, 5-minute sort of ceremony, put him back in the airplane, flew back to Ohio, and then he died 2 weeks later, a married man.
Yeah.
Just 2 years ago, we're flying to touch soil in another state so we could be deemed married. I mean, that case is just powerful. It's huge. So the far-reaching effects, to your point, beyond marriage, it's a legitimacy thing. We've been fighting for so long for so little.
But I'm thinking about all of the other things that this opens up, and how we have to reinterpret many of the issues that we have previously only applied to married couples of the opposite sex. Things like divorce, adoption, child custody, business relationships, insurance, and other family benefits. I mean, even for a workplace that has a benefit package for married couples that now has to look at extending those benefits to same-sex couples, and how does that change the structure and the risk allocation and so on and so forth. All of these types. Are we really ready for all of these other effects?
Well, actually, and that's going to be easier, and that's a sort of a myth that I think a lot of conservatives use to say, this is just going to be so difficult to implement. Gay people have been together for, 100 years. Edie Windsor is 85 now, and her and her partner were together for 40-some-odd years. So companies, Fortune 500 companies, 280-some-odd of them joined an amicus brief wanting gay marriage because, let's say Google, for instance. Google has employees in all 50 states, and they have gay employees. And so if gay marriage wasn't legal in Mississippi, but they had to give that employee domestic partnership benefits, and now you have a gay couple in New York and they are married, and then you have, another couple that's married in New York but lives in Mississippi. So you had three classes of citizens in the accounting for Google. And for all of these companies, and especially, car insurance, homeowners insurance.
Right.
My partner and I had homeowners insurance, but we weren't deemed to be married. And now we just update them and say, hey, now we're married, and now our homeowners insurance is less money.
Yeah.
Our car insurance is less money. So companies, it makes everything more streamlined. You're either married or not.
Let me ask you this from the standpoint of the legal system. Can you envision, because of the application of some of these other issues, because of the application of the law when it comes to some of those other issues that I just mentioned, can you envision legal action being taken when there are outcomes that don't seem quite kosher? Do you understand what I'm saying?
No.
Well,
Give me an example.
I'm just saying, if let's say a divorced same-sex couple feels that a child custody hearing was not adjudicated properly, given the fact that it's a same-sex couple versus a heterosexual couple, I mean, can you see that as then becoming a lawsuit in and of itself? You see what I mean?
And right, and again, those things have been dealt with already. So for instance, I've been doing adoption forever, and the only reason it wouldn't be adjudicated properly is if we think the judge has some bias and is homophobic and treating my client differently because they're gay. And so we've already been dealing with that years ago, where, you know, we just felt like the adoption was much harder than it otherwise would have been for a straight couple.
Yeah.
You know, and I
that's
have to say,
kind
Your
of
Honor,
that's what I'm getting at. That
so
and that's a good point.
Been happening.
That's already been happening. So that's a fair point. And finally,
we're used to that already.
Yeah. And finally, in the last minute or so that I have, let me ask you this. I want to get your thoughts. Perhaps the most interesting reaction to this decision came from Rand Paul, who opined that the time has come to examine whether or not governmental recognition of marriage at all is a good idea. In an op-ed piece for Time magazine, he writes, and I'm quoting here, "Since government has been involved in marriage, they have done what they always do, taxed it, regulated it, and now redefined it. Perhaps it is time to be more careful what we ask government to do and where we allow it to become part of our lives," unquote. Is there some logic to that?
Absolutely. I completely agree 100%. You know, at the end of the day, when you have something that has 1,138 federal rights attached to it, then you can't deny a group of people the ability to do it. And so if there weren't 1,138 federal rights tied to marriage, we wouldn't be having a constitutional issue on whether or not I have the right to be married. So, you know, in most countries, Canadian. I come from a long line of straight people that never got married, because in Canada there's really no, you know, fiscal, financial, tax, whatever benefit to it.
It is strictly a religious ritual.
Exactly.
Yeah.
We mucked it all up. We mucked it up. You know, it just is what it is. Everybody in Canada is colloquially considered married, but the only family member in my family up there to have gotten married is my mom, and she's the only one divorced. So if you wanted marriage to be a religious institution, you should have kept it as such.
Yeah.
But the government tied 1,138 federal rights to it. Therefore, I want it, and I deserve it as a citizen of this country.
And
I really think we should just let go of marriage altogether in the way that we've currently defined it, and then there you have it.
We will leave it there. Again, Angela D. Giampolo. She is a prominent gay rights attorney based in Philadelphia. We appreciate you taking some time and giving us a few moments this morning. Angela, thanks so much.
Thank you, Chris.
It is 8:22, 22 minutes after 8 o'clock now as Good Mornings continues.